The human fleet looked like tiny dots against the endless black of space as they crossed into the dead zone. 57 colony ships carried 12 million humans away from everything they had ever known. Captain J. Mean stood on the bridge of his flagship watching the last star of civilized space disappear behind them. The ships were old and patched with metal plates welded over holes. The Galaxy Council had taken all their good technology and left them with barely working engines. Inside each ship, something amazing was happening. Engineer Sora worked in what used to be a storage room but was now her laboratory. She had torn apart every piece of alien technology she could find and spread the parts across tables made from old cargo containers. Her team of 20 engineers worked around her taking notes and asking questions. "We do not need their fancy quantum drives," Sora told her team as she held up a broken piece of alien metal. "We just need to understand how they work. Look at this power cell. It stores energy using crystals that vibrate at specific frequencies. If we can make our own crystals, we can make our own power cells." The engineers gathered around the table like students around a teacher. Sora had been fixing machines since she was a child on Earth. Her father had been a mechanic and had taught her that every machine was just a puzzle waiting to be solved. The aliens thought their technology was too advanced for humans to understand. They were wrong. Captain Jamin walked through the corridors of his ship, stopping to talk with families who had lost everything. Children asked him why the aliens hated them so much. Parents worried about finding food and water in the dead zone. Old people wondered if they would live to see a new home. But in all their eyes, Jamin saw something that made him proud. The thing he saw was the same thing that had always made humans different from other species. It was the refusal to give up. It was the ability to look at a problem and say, "We will find a way." It was the spark that turned ordinary people into heroes when they had to be. Captain called Navigator Dong Ho from the bridge. "We are getting strange readings from the Kepler sector. It looks like there might be planets out here that could support life." The news spread through the fleet like wildfire. The dead zone was not empty after all. It was full of worlds that no other species had bothered to explore. As they traveled deeper into unexplored space, the human fleet began to change ships that had been built to carry families, and supplies were modified with new purposes. Civilian transports became research vessels. Cargo holds were turned into workshops. Mining ships became scouts that flew ahead to check for dangers. Scientists worked next to mechanics and teachers worked next to soldiers. Dr. Minho gathered the children from all the ships for classes that were broadcast over the fleet communication system. "Today we are going to learn about alien technology," he announced as hundreds of young faces looked at him from screens. "The aliens think we are too stupid to understand their machines. They think only they are smart enough to build faster than light drives and energy weapons." The children laughed as Dr. Minho held up pieces of alien equipment. "But humans have always been good at taking things apart and putting them back together better than before. Your grandparents did it with cars and computers. Your parents did it with spaceships. Now you are going to do it with alien technology." 10-year-old Jinnah raised her hand from one of the colony ships. "Dr. Minho, why did the aliens kick us out if we are so good at fixing things?" The question made all the adults on the bridge stop what they were doing to listen. Dr. Minho smiled at the little girl. "Because they were afraid, Jinnah. They were afraid that if humans learned to build things as well as they could, we would become too powerful. They thought by sending us away they would stay safe. Instead, they gave us the chance to become everything they feared we could be." The first human colony was established on a world they named New Sol. It was a beautiful planet, with purple skies and 2 suns that painted everything in shades of gold and violet. The air was clean and the water was pure. There were no dangerous animals and the soil was rich enough to grow earth crops. As the colony ships landed on the surface of New Sol, thousands of humans stepped onto alien soil for the first time. Children ran through fields of strange flowers that glowed in the dark. Parents set up homes in buildings made from the hulls of old spaceships. Engineers began construction of the first permanent structures using materials mined from the planet. Sora stood on a hill overlooking the new colony and watched her people work. In just 6 months, they had built a city that could house 50,000 people. They had farms that produced enough food to feed everyone. They had factories that were already improving on alien technology. They had schools where children learned to dream of building starships that could travel to other galaxies. Captain Jamin joined her on the hill, and together they watched the sunset paint the purple sky in brilliant colors of orange and red. "Look at what we have built," he said. 6 months ago we were refugees with broken ships. Now we have a home that is better than anything we left behind. Sora nodded as she watched children. Playing in the streets below, the aliens thought they were punishing us. Instead, they gave us exactly what we needed. Freedom. Freedom to build without their rules. Freedom to explore without their limits. Freedom to become what humans were always meant to be. More ships arrived every week. Some carried refugees from other human colonies that had been destroyed by the Galaxy Council. Others brought supplies and equipment that had been hidden from the alien inspectors. But the most important thing they brought was news from the civilized galaxy. The aliens were not doing well without humans. Human colonies had provided food and raw materials to dozens of alien worlds. Human engineers had maintained the technology that kept alien cities running. Human soldiers had fought in alien wars to protect species that could not protect themselves. Now all of that was gone. Captain Jamin broadcast a message to the entire human fleet from his command center on New Sol. "They thought they were sending us to die," he said, his voice carrying to every human settlement in the dead zone. "Instead, they gave us the greatest gift possible. They gave us the chance to start over. They gave us worlds to explore and stars to claim. They gave us the freedom to build an empire." The message was recorded and sent back towards civilized space, where it was picked up by alien listening posts. The Galaxy Council heard Captain Jamin's words, and for the first time since the exile, some of them began to wonder if they had made a terrible mistake. The humans were not dying in the dead zone. They were thriving, and they were building something that would change the galaxy forever. The giant crystal room was filled with angry voices from hundreds of different alien creatures. Captain Jamin stood in the middle of the room with his hands tied by glowing chains that buzzed with electric power. All around him sat aliens from over 300 different worlds, and they all looked at him like he was some kind of monster. The room was so big that Jamin could barely see the walls. The ceiling went up so high, it seemed to touch the stars themselves. Every seat was filled with creatures that looked nothing like humans. Some had 4 arms. Some had no arms at all. Some breathed water instead of air and sat in special tanks. Some were made of rock and metal instead of flesh and blood. But they all had one thing in common. They all hated humans. Supreme Judge Veltara was the biggest alien in the room. She had purple skin that sparkled like diamonds and 4 arms that moved like dancing snakes. When she raised all 4 arms high above her head, the room became quiet as a tomb. Her voice was deep and scary when she spoke. The trial had been going on for 3 whole days and nights. Jamin had listened to alien after alien stand up and tell the court why humans were bad. One alien with green scales said humans were too violent. Another alien that looked like a giant spider said humans never knew when to give up. A third alien made of pure energy said humans were a danger to peace in the galaxy. Jamin wanted to scream at them all. He wanted to tell them that humans only fought when they had to. He wanted to explain that humans never gave up because giving up meant death. But the glowing chains around his hands made it hard to move, and every time he tried to speak, the aliens just talked louder. Ambassador Quintel slithered forward on his snake-like body. His eyes were cold and yellow like old gold coins. When he spoke, his voice made a hissing sound that echoed through the crystal chamber. "Humans are the most dangerous species we have ever seen," said. "They fight wars that last for years. They never surrender even when they are beaten. They would rather die than bow down to a stronger enemy. This makes them too risky to live among civilized species." The other aliens nodded their heads. Some made clicking sounds with their mouths. Others flashed different colors with their skin. One alien that looked like a walking tree swayed back and forth like it was dancing. All of them agreed that humans were trouble. Jamin felt something hot and angry growing in his chest as he listened. He thought about his home planet Earth, where billions of humans lived normal lives. They had families and jobs and dreams just like any other species. But these aliens saw them as nothing but violent monsters, thought about the human colonies spread across dozens of worlds, farmers growing food to feed their families, teachers helping children learn new things, doctors healing the sick, engineers building better machines for everyone to use. None of that mattered to the Galaxy Council. All they saw was the fighting Supreme Judge Veltara stood up from her massive throne. The crystal room became so quiet that Jamin could hear his own heart beating. She looked down at him with eyes that glowed like purple fire. After hearing all the evidence, she said the Galaxy Council has made its decision. The human species is too aggressive and too dangerous to remain in civilized space. You refuse to follow the rules that keep peace among the stars. You fight when you should talk. You attack when you should retreat. You never learn to be afraid. Jamin felt the words hit him like hammer blows. Each sentence was like a nail being driven into a coffin. But instead of fear, he felt something else growing. Inside him, it was not anger exactly. It was more like a cold fire that burned without heat. The Supreme Judge raised one of her forearms, and the crystal chamber filled with a low humming sound. Your punishment is exile, she announced. All human colonies will be stripped of advanced technology. All human ships will have their weapons removed. You will be sent to the dead zone beyond the rim of the galaxy, where no civilized species has ever gone. The dead zone was a place that existed in stories and nightmares. It was the empty space between galaxies where stars were few and planets were cold and dead. No ship had ever returned from the dead zone, because there was nothing there but darkness and silence. The aliens thought they were sending humans to a slow death. You have 72 hours to gather your people and leave our space forever. The Supreme Judge continued. If any human ship is found in Council territory after that time, it will be destroyed without warning. This is the mercy of the Galaxy Council. We could have killed you all, but instead we give you a chance to disappear quietly. The glowing chains around Jamin's hands suddenly fell away and clattered to the crystal floor. He rubbed his wrists where the chains had burned. His skin and looked around at hundreds of alien faces staring at him. Some looked satisfied like they had just finished a good meal. Others looked relieved like a danger had been removed. Jamin stood up straight and tall. He was not a big man compared to some of the aliens in the room, but something about the way he stood made him seem larger than he was. His voice was calm and steady when he spoke. We accept your exile, he said. Every word echoed through the silent chamber. But remember this day. Remember that you chose to make enemies of the human race. Remember that you had the chance to have us as friends and you threw it away. Some of the aliens laughed quietly, thinking that humans were just trying to save face. They thought the dead zone would kill every human within a few years. They thought they would never hear from humanity again. They had no idea how wrong they were. Jamin turned around and walked toward the exit of the crystal chamber. His footsteps echoed like thunder. In the quiet room, every step was firm and strong, like he was not walking to his doom but toward a new beginning. Behind him, he could hear aliens starting to talk again, already forgetting about the species they had just thrown away. Outside the council chambers, Jamin pulled out his communication device. It was a small metal box that could send messages across the galaxy to any human ship or colony. His fingers moved quickly as he composed the most important message of his life. This is Captain Jamin, he began. His voice was broadcast to millions of humans on hundreds of worlds. We have been exiled by the Galaxy Council. They think they are sending us to die in the empty space beyond the galaxy. They think they have seen the last of humanity. They are wrong. He paused and looked up at the alien city around him. Tall buildings reached toward the sky, filled with creatures that thought they were better than humans. Ships flew through the air, carrying aliens who believed they ruled the universe. All of this would change soon. Gather your families, he continued. Gather your supplies. Gather everything useful you can carry. Most importantly, gather your anger. We leave for the dead zone in 3 days. Our real journey starts now. The aliens think. They have destroyed us. Instead, they have set us free. The first strike came like lightning from a clear sky. Council patrol ships near the dead zone border simply vanished from their sensors without warning. Their emergency signals lasted only seconds before being cut off by weapons that tore through. alien hulls like they were made of paper. When rescue vessels finally arrived hours later, they found nothing but floating debris and a message being broadcast on all communication frequencies. The Phoenix Empire remembers Admiral J. Mean commanded the human attack fleet from the bridge of his flagship as they swept through the outer territories of Council space like an unstoppable storm. His ships appeared from hyperspace, destroyed their targets, and disappeared again before Council forces could respond. The humans had learned to fight smart, using speed and surprise instead of brute force. The alien commanders who tried to intercept the human fleet found themselves fighting ghosts. Phoenix ships would appear on one side of a star system, destroy a space station, and vanish only to reappear on the opposite side minutes later, attacking a different target. The Council had grown used to fighting enemies who met them in open battle. They had no idea how to fight an enemy that refused to follow the rules, Captain. Sujin led the stealth attacks on Council communication networks. Her invisible ship slipped past alien defenses and planted devices that let Phoenix intelligence listen to every Council military transmission within days. The humans knew exactly where every Council fleet was located, what their orders were, and when they planned to move. The aliens are panicking. Sujin reported to Admiral Jamin during a secure communication. They are pulling ships from all over the galaxy to defend their core worlds, but they do not know where we will strike next. Every time they move forces to protect one area, we hit them somewhere else. Their commanders are arguing with each other and blaming everyone except themselves. General Kyung-soo prepared his marine forces for the ground assault on Veltara Prime, the same world where humans had been tried and sentenced to exile 20 years ago. His soldiers wore powered armor that made them stronger than any alien warrior and carried weapons that could punch through any known defense material. But more importantly, they carried 20 years of anger and the memory of every humiliation the Council had inflicted on humanity. The battle for Veltara Prime lasted only 6 hours. Council ground forces had never faced an enemy like human Marines. Human soldiers did not retreat when they were wounded. They fought harder. Human squads did not panic when they were outnumbered. They used their intelligence to turn the odds in their favor. Human commanders did not surrender when the situation looked hopeless. They found ways to make victory from defeat. The Council defenders had expected the humans to land at the main spaceport where they had prepared massive defensive positions. Instead, Phoenix dropships landed all over the planet in dozens of small groups. Each squad had a specific target: communication centers, power plants, government buildings, military headquarters. By the time the aliens realized what was happening, human forces had already captured everything that mattered. Supreme Judge Veltara sat in her crystal chambers trying to understand reports that made no sense. Her military advisors told her that human forces had somehow bypassed all their outer defenses. Her intelligence officers insisted that the Phoenix Empire was just a small group of refugees hiding in the dead zone. Her communication specialists reported that human broadcasts were being received across the entire galaxy. Impossible, she gasped as the sounds of battle grew closer to her council building. The same crystal hall where she had sentenced humanity to exile 20 years ago now echoed with the sound of human boots and human weapons. The massive doors that had once seemed so secure were blown apart by explosives that turned solid metal into dust. Admiral Jamin walked through the same entrance where he had once stood as a prisoner, but now he wore the uniform of a conquering hero. His officers followed behind him, their weapons ready but their faces calm. They had waited 20 years for this moment, and now that it had arrived, they felt only satisfaction. "You said we were too aggressive," Admiral Jamin said as he looked down at the alien judge who had ruined so many human lives. "You said we were too dangerous for civilized space. You said we would never learn to follow the rules. You were right about everything except one thing. What was that?" Supreme Judge Veltara asked, her voice shaking with fear as human soldiers took positions around the crystal chamber. "You thought civilized space meant your rules," Admiral Jamin replied. "But civilization is not about following rules made by bullies. Civilization is about protecting the innocent and punishing the guilty. Today we bring real civilization to the galaxy." The news of Veltara Prime surrender spread across Council space faster than their military communications could travel. Human forces had captured the capital world of the galaxy, Council, in less than a day. Species that had once laughed at human exile now begged for mercy. Worlds that had celebrated humanity departure now offered tribute. Fleets that had enforced council law now fled toward the galactic core. But the Phoenix Empire was not interested in mercy or tribute. They were interested in justice, and justice had been waiting for 20 years to be served. Every council world that had voted for human exile received a visit from Phoenix fleets. Every alien leader who had spoken against humanity found human soldiers at their door. Every species that had celebrated human suffering learned what it felt like to be helpless. Commander Yu-Jin broadcast the terms of surrender from the captured council headquarters on Veltara Prime. Her message was transmitted to every inhabited world in the galaxy using the same communication network that had once carried news of human exile. "The Galaxy Council is dissolved," she announced. "The Phoenix Empire now governs this sector of space. Species that wish to join us as equals will be welcomed with open arms. Species that wish to resist will be crushed without mercy. Species that choose to flee will be allowed to leave, but they will never be allowed to return." Choice was simple, but the aliens found it harder to make than they expected. Many council species had grown used to being rulers and could not imagine becoming equals. Some chose to fight and learned why the council had feared humans in the first place. Others chose to flee, abandoning their worlds rather than live under human authority. But surprisingly, many chose to stay and found that human rule was fairer than anything they had known under the council. The hegemony formed from the remaining. Council loyalists launched desperate counterattacks against human colonies. They expected to find the same refugees they had exiled 20 years ago. Instead, they found fortress worlds defended by weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Alien commanders who had once terrorized human settlements now watched their own ships burn. In the cold vacuum of space, Admiral Jamin stood on the observation deck of his flagship, looking out at a galaxy that had changed forever. The Phoenix Empire controlled hundreds of star systems and was growing larger every day. Ships flew freely between human and alien worlds, carrying trade goods and passengers. Species that had been enemies for centuries now worked together on projects that benefited everyone. The aliens had tried to destroy humanity by sending them into exile. Instead, they had given humans exactly what they needed to become the greatest power the galaxy had ever seen. The Dead Zone had become the birthplace of an empire that would reshape the stars themselves. 20 years had passed since the exile, and the Dead Zone was no longer a place of death. Admiral Jamin stood on the bridge of the Phoenix, the most powerful warship ever built by human hands. Around him stretched a fleet of over 300 vessels, each one more advanced than anything the Galaxy Council possessed. Human settlements now covered 47 star systems, and each world was a testament to human determination. The transformation had been beyond anything the aliens could have imagined. Engineer Sora now held the title of Chief Technology Officer, and had not only figured out how alien devices worked, but had made them better. Her workshops on New Sol produced weapons that could cut through alien armor like paper, shields that could withstand attacks from entire fleets' engines, that could travel distances the Galaxy Council thought impossible. We took their technology and made it work the way it should have worked from the beginning, Sora reported to Admiral Jamin during their weekly meeting. "Our weapons are 30% more powerful than theirs. Our shields can take twice as much damage. Our ships can travel 3 times faster and use half as much fuel." Dr. Minho had spent 20 years studying every piece of information they could gather about alien species. He knew how each race fought what they feared, and how their military forces were organized. His intelligence network stretched across the galaxy using human traders and diplomats who had been left behind during the exile. "The council races have grown soft," he explained to the Admiral during a strategy session. "They have ruled the galaxy for so long that they have forgotten what real war looks like. They rely on fear and superior numbers to win battles. They have never fought an enemy that gets stronger when things get difficult." The Phoenix Empire, as the humans now called their space, had become a beacon of hope for species that had been crushed under the boot of the galaxy. Council refugee ships arrived every month carrying beings who had fled alien oppression. They brought knowledge, skills, and most importantly, a burning hatred for the Council that had destroyed their worlds. The Keth were a race of brilliant scientists. whose homeworld had been stripped of resources by Council mining operations. The survivors who made it to human space shared their knowledge of quantum physics and helped build faster-than-light communication systems. The Ural were warriors whose species had been enslaved to fight in Council wars. The ones who escaped became trainers for human soldiers, teaching them combat techniques from across the galaxy. Captain Su Jin commanded the first Phoenix reconnaissance mission back to Council space, her ship. The Shadow was invisible to alien sensors thanks to human improvements to stealth technology. She spent 6 months moving through Council territory, gathering information on military bases, fleet positions, and defensive capabilities. What she found shocked even the most optimistic human planners. The alien races had grown lazy and complacent in their power. Their fleets were scattered across the galaxy with no central command. Their defenses were based on technology that was decades old. Their warriors spent more time in parades than in training. They are not prepared for war. Sujin reported to Admiral Jamin when she returned. They think the biggest threat they face is pirates and smugglers. They have no idea that an entire human empire has been built in the dead zone. Their intelligence services do not even monitor the border regions anymore. Admiral Jamin studied the tactical reports spread across the holographic display in his command center. The Galaxy Council controlled over 800 star systems, but their military was spread so thin that most worlds had only token defenses. Their main battle fleets were concentrated around their capital worlds, leaving the outer territories virtually unprotected. But the most shocking discovery was how much the Council had declined without human support. Human colonies had provided food to dozens of alien worlds. Human engineers had maintained critical infrastructure. Human soldiers had fought in border wars to protect Council territory. Now, without human support, many Council worlds were struggling with shortages and technical failures. The aliens had made themselves dependent on human skill and knowledge without realizing it. When they exiled humanity, they had cut off their own life support systems. Many Council worlds were now importing food at 10 times the cost they had paid to human farmers. Industrial accidents had increased by 300% without human engineers to maintain safety. Systems Admiral Jamin called a meeting of all Phoenix Empire military commanders. The holographic conference room was filled with the images of captains and generals from across human space. Some were veterans of the original exile. Others were younger officers who had grown up in the Phoenix Empire, but all of them shared the same determination that had carried humanity through 20 years of exile. The time has come. Admiral Jamin announced to his assembled officers. The Galaxy Council thought they were sending us to die. Instead, they gave us time to become strong. They thought they were removing a threat. Instead, they created their worst enemy. It is time to remind the galaxy why they feared us in the first place. General Kyung-soo, commander of the Phoenix Marine Corps, stood up from his chair. Admiral, my forces are ready. We have trained for 20 years for this moment. We have studied every alien military tactic and developed counters for all of them. We have weapons and armor that make us superior to any Council soldier. My Marines are not just ready for war, they are hungry for it. Colonel Yu Jin, head of Phoenix Intelligence, added her own assessment. Our spy networks have identified every major Council military installation. We know where their fleets are stationed, we know their patrol schedules, we know which worlds are heavily defended and which ones are vulnerable. We can strike at targets of our choosing while avoiding their strengths. The Phoenix Empire had advantages that the Galaxy Council could not match. Human ships were faster and more maneuverable. Human weapons were more powerful. Human soldiers were better trained and motivated. But most importantly, humans had something that no alien species possessed: the willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. Admiral Jamin looked around the conference room at the faces of officers who had grown up in exile. They had never known the comfort of being accepted by the galaxy. They had been born into a struggle for survival and had turned that struggle into strength. The Galaxy Council had tried to destroy humanity and had instead forged them into the perfect weapon. The Phoenix Empire will not make the same mistakes the Council made, Admiral Jamin declared. We will not become soft and lazy. We will not forget what it takes to survive. We will build our empire on the foundation of human determination and we will make sure that no species ever again suffers what we suffered. The first phase of the return would begin in 3 months. Phoenix fleets would strike at Council outposts in the Outer Rim, destroying military installations and capturing strategic resources. The aliens would learn that the humans they had exiled were no longer refugees begging for mercy. They were conquerors coming to claim what was rightfully theirs. 5 years after the return, the Phoenix Empire controlled over 2/3 of the galaxy. Emperor Jamin ruled from New Earth, a massive space station at the center of human territory, surrounded by a fleet that could destroy entire star systems, if needed. But unlike the old Galaxy Council, the Phoenix Empire offered something that had never existed before: true equality among all species. The great space station New Earth was a marvel of engineering that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. In every direction, ships from dozens of different worlds docked at its ports every day, bringing trade goods, passengers, and new ideas. The station had districts designed for every type of alien life. Water-breathing species lived in flooded sections. Rock-based creatures had areas with high gravity and extreme heat. Energy beings had special chambers that let them exist without physical form. Ambassador Hyejin worked in the Phoenix Senate building, where representatives from over 200 species met to discuss laws and policies for the Empire. She had been a simple teacher on Earth before the exile, but 25 years in the Phoenix Empire had taught her how to speak the languages of dozens of alien races and understand their different ways of thinking. We are not here to replace one tyranny with another, she explained to a gathering of alien representatives who were still learning how the new government worked. We are here to build something better. A galaxy where strength is respected but not used to hurt the weak. Where every species has a voice in their own future. Where cooperation brings more rewards than conquest. The transformation of the galaxy had been remarkable. Species that had been slaves under the Council found themselves with seats in the Phoenix Senate. Technologies that had been restricted to certain races were now shared freely with anyone who wanted to learn. Trade flourished as barriers fell, and new partnerships formed between species that had been enemies for centuries. Chief Engineer Sora, now elderly but still brilliant, oversaw the construction of massive shipyards that produced vessels for dozens of different species. Her workshops had become schools where human engineers taught alien students how to build better, faster ships. Her factories produced everything from tiny scout vessels to enormous colony ships that could carry entire populations to new worlds. The Council kept everyone weak by limiting their access to technology, she observed during a meeting with Emperor Jamin. We make everyone strong by sharing knowledge. A strong ally is better than a weak servant. When everyone has access to the same tools, everyone can contribute their own unique ideas to make those tools even better. But not all species embraced the new order. The Hegemony, a coalition of former council members who refused to accept human leadership, continued to launch attacks against Phoenix colonies. They had retreated to the far edges of the galaxy where they tried to rebuild their old system of oppression and control. The hegemony forces discovered that humanity allies fought with the same determination as humans themselves. When hegemony fleets attacked the world of Keth Prime, they expected to find weak civilians who would surrender quickly. Instead, they found Keth warriors using human weapons and human tactics, fighting alongside human marines. The battle lasted 3 days and ended with every hegemony ship either destroyed or captured. The oppressed had learned from their liberators that freedom was worth any sacrifice. Species that had been crushed under council rule for centuries now stood up and fought back against their former masters. The galaxy was learning that strength did not come from fear or superior numbers, but from the willingness to stand together against those who would take away their freedom. Dr. Minho, now the Empire Chief Advisor, authored the Phoenix Doctrine that would guide human policy for generations to come. The document was studied in schools across the Empire and translated into over 300 alien languages so that every species could understand the principles that made the Phoenix Empire different from every other government. In galactic history, we do not seek conquest for its own sake. The doctrine stated we seek to create a galaxy where no species suffers what humanity suffered, where strength protects the innocent rather than exploiting them, where diversity is celebrated rather than feared, Where every being has the right to live free from oppression regardless of their race, homeworld, or beliefs, the Phoenix Academy was established on New Sol, where the first human colony had been built. The Academy welcomed students from every species in the Empire, teaching them not just human technology and tactics but human values. Young aliens learned alongside human children, studying subjects that had never been taught together before: military strategy and philosophy, art and engineering, alien biology, and human psychology. 10-year-old Tae-hyun, a human boy who had been born in the Phoenix Empire, sat in a classroom next to Vel, a young Keth whose parents had been freed from council slavery, and Zara, a Ural warrior, trainee whose homeworld had been destroyed by council forces. Together, they worked on a project to design a new type of starship that could carry emergency supplies to disaster areas anywhere in the galaxy. This is what the council never understood, their teacher explained as she watched the children collaborate. The best ideas come when different minds work together. Humans are good at solving problems under pressure. Keth are brilliant at understanding energy systems. Ural are experts at building things that can survive in hostile environments. When you combine all these skills, you get something better than any one species could create. A lone emperor. Jamin stood on the observation deck of New Earth, looking out at a galaxy that had changed, beyond all recognition. Where once there had been rigid hierarchies and casual cruelty, now there was opportunity and hope. Human children played alongside alien children in parks throughout the Empire. Former enemies worked together on projects that would have been impossible under the old system. His reflection was interrupted by the arrival of Admiral Su-jin, who had become the commander of the Phoenix Exploration Fleet. Her ships were pushing beyond the edges of the galaxy, searching for new worlds and new species to invite into the Empire. "We have made contact with 3 new species this month," she reported. 2 of them are asking for protection from raiders. The 3rd wants to trade their medical knowledge for our defensive technology. All of them have heard stories about the Phoenix Empire and want to see if the stories are true. Emperor Jamin smiled as he thought about how far humanity had come from the day they had been exiled from civilized space. "They exiled us to destroy us," he said to Admiral Su-jin. "Instead, they gave us the freedom to become what we were always meant to be. Not conquerors, but leaders. Not destroyers, but builders. Not the most aggressive species in the galaxy, but the most determined to create something better." The Phoenix Empire stretched across the stars, a testament to human refusal to accept defeat. What had begun as exile had become liberation, not just for humanity, but for every species brave enough to dream of a better galaxy. The Council had feared human aggression, but what they should have feared was human hope. Hope was the most dangerous weapon in the universe, and humanity had taught the galaxy how to use it. The Empire continued to grow, not through conquest, but through invitation. Species from distant galaxies sent messages asking to join the Phoenix Empire. Refugees from oppressive governments made dangerous journeys to reach human space. Young beings from across the universe came to study at Phoenix academies and learn what it meant to be free. The galaxy had learned that true civilization was not about following rules made by the powerful. It was about protecting the weak, standing up to bullies, and never giving up on the dream of a better tomorrow. The humans who had once been called too aggressive to live among civilized species had become the teachers of what civilization really meant.